All right, guys, welcome to the Buff Show. Today we have a very special guest. So this show is named The Buffs, meaning, he's a real estate buff or a computer buff or a movie buff, like the experts. Not only Ethan beats all definitions of buff. The physical buff, he's got 2 master's degrees. The guy's just an expert in every field, in every sense of the definition of buff.
None of this is true. None of this is true.
You can see his ego just getting puffed up.
I'm just filing all of this away for later.
I've been waiting to have this podcast for a while.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time.
So Ethan, we go way back. Let's tell our story a little bit of how we met, because it was kind of interesting. So we both served a mission. This was like 2011.
Yeah.
Maybe no,
2012.
No, because I got home. I got 2010.
2012. You're right.
2010. I got home in 2011. So if I remember right, we got called to serve as mission companions in this area, and we served in the Dominican Republic, like an island in the middle of the Caribbean. I didn't even know where it was when I first got called there. So we get called to whitewash this area.
It's not true.
You were there?
Whitewash. I was there. It was called La Caleta.
Oh my gosh. Well, I felt like we were whitewashing it.
Well, I was brand new. I was like, I had just had a companion who trained me for one transfer. And the guy in the Dominican Republic, he taught me, he once made fun of me. We're literally on an island in the Caribbean, and he made fun of me for buying a pineapple at the grocery store. He was like, "You're going to have to carry that home." And so I lived in my first 6 weeks in the Dominican Republic. I lived eating out of what they call colmados, which are just like little stores on the street.
And you were eating like rice every night for dinner.
I would have 2 cups of rice with chicken bouillon. And I was blowing up. It's like a funny thing that happens to a lot of missionaries because they don't learn how to eat ever. And so I was just eating 2 cups of white rice before bed every night. But I was also eating like bread and salami for breakfast.
Yeah.
Like that was how I was taught to live in the Dominican Republic. And then Peyton came and saved me. He taught me how, because you'd been there for what, like a year?
Yeah.
Probably about a year. And
I always teased him. I'm like, I'm your real daddy in the mission.
Oh, geez. Nobody's my real daddy. But yeah, you were.
We got it dialed in at first. Well, we butted heads a lot.
Tons. We still butt heads.
We still do, but it's a fun part of our relationship. So ever since then, we've been best buddies, just doing crazy stuff. But that was like some of the best memories I have. Because I remember I'd like wake up and I'd be like, nobody knows where we're at. Like we're in the middle of this country, like living in this shack.
Yep.
On the dirt road. Like one night we came home and there were guys sword fighting with machetes trying to kill each other right in front of our house. And we're just
like on our doorstep.
Yeah, we're just like little babies standing there like
19-year-old kids.
Just wondering like we need to get into our house.
You guys chill for a second. Pause.
Another time we came home, there were 3 massive tarantulas like the size of a baseball in our kitchen.
Yeah.
And they
were technically banana spiders. Very harmless.
Well,
but we broke a tile trying to smash them.
We broke a few. We had to go tell the landlord. We broke the floor because I'm like, you hit those 2. I got this one. We did it. Did we kill both of them?
I think we got them all, yeah.
It was crazy.
I remember one time too, you stepped on a tarantula. We were out at night and we found a tarantula just on the road, and you stepped on it and its legs were splayed out underneath your foot. Like it was that big.
It felt like crazy. I stepped on like an egg, like the spiders there. Oh my gosh. So anyways, that's where we met. And then ever since then, we've just been having a good time together.
Yeah, we were lifting buddies for a while. You got to tell them about the weight in the Dominican Republic.
Oh, yeah.
So I mentioned I was gaining a ton of weight and eating like garbage, being made fun of for buying fruit, literally fruit on a Caribbean island. And so when we got there, we got these, in the Dominican Republic, they use a lot of oil. They cook with a lot of oil. And so they have these like 5-gallon
like
cans of oil.
Yeah.
And it was common in the Dominican Republic that people would use cans, fill them with the cement, put a bar in them, and create like barbells. It was like a thing that people would do all the time. And so we created one, but using 5-gallon things of oil. So we filled it with cement, went to the hardware store, and got this big old like
The
How
bar
big?
was heavy.
It was like 2.5 inches across.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was
massive.
so solid.
Could barely hold on to it. And we created this weight that probably weighed, what, like 200 pounds?
It was right around 200. I
I think it was probably about. We never actually knew.
Well, we couldn't weigh it. We just knew it was
couldn't weigh it.
freaking heavy. We would power clean with it
And squat
and
and
do
bench.
and make a makeshift bench that we could have easily died on because the chairs we were laying our backs on were like all crickety and like
made of
just
wood.
on the verge of like collapsing underneath of us because we're like 200 pounds.
Yeah.
The weights we had like 400 pounds on like this crickety old
Yeah.
wood. I don't know if it was like a desk or chair or something, but we would lay on it and bench.
Yeah. And then the landlord said to us after we built it, he said, "Ningún hombre puede levantar ese peso." He said, "No man can lift that weight." And then every day we would go out at lunchtime and just get jacked.
Yeah.
And then we would like pack our food. And anyway, it was we were thriving as missionaries out there.
No,
anyway,
it was,
that's a funny story.
It was
Sure.
it was the best. Yeah,
was
the
a good
best
time.
because we were together for 2 transfers, so 12
Yeah, it was like
weeks.
12 weeks, yeah.
It was fun. We'd make our meals, like we'd meal prepped, had a good time, slept on top of the roof. One other story that was pretty funny, the cockroach when we were talking. Ethan was
Oh,
talking
yeah.
to some people and I saw this cockroach run out in the street, climbed up his leg, and I just stepped back and I'm like, oh, this is going to be funny. Because he's like all just in this conversation and I see it climb up his leg, go up his back, and it just kind of disappeared. And next thing I know, it's like circling around his head.
dark.
And he's like swats his head. He's like, what was that? Like just, and I'm like, I don't know. I didn't see anything. And then it does it again. And he gets like even more shook up. Cause there's the most dangerous thing in the DR is the centipedes. Like they're actually poisonous
Big,
and
long, nasty things.
they can hurt you. So it does another loop around his face and he's a little bit more shook and he's like, what was that? And I'm like, I don't know. He continues talking. And then the third time he just loses it, rips his backpack
Started
off.
taking my clothes off in the middle of the street.
Oh man, it was awesome. But
Cockroaches still to this day, like I will run like a child, like a little baby girl. And my wife will, like we saw one once and we went back as a family on vacation there and my wife had to take care of it because I was just like, something psychological about it. I can't handle it.
well, how about the one so we went to Vietnam with our wives
Yeah.
and we were on the sleeper train and there was a there was a cockroach in there and you would think Ethan,
It came out of my
Like-
bag. Don't you remember?
I don't remember where
It came out of my bag.
but
We had stayed in this nasty Airbnb that Peyton picked. I planned the entire vacation except for one place. And
that's where the best memories came from. Was that one.
it was a cool place, but not the Airbnb. The Airbnb was like outdoors and it was like one of the most expensive places we stayed, but it was the nastiest. And there were bugs, and we went from there straight to the sleeper car, and I opened up my bag, and there's a little baby cockroach in there. So I grabbed what I needed and zipped it back up. So
Well, it got out at one point because we killed it in there.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, but I think we smushed it on the bed or something. But
nasty.
I think Ethan.
I hate
I
cockroaches.
think Allie killed it. Ethan
Yeah,
was
she
like
saved me.
in the corner crying.
Like a damsel in distress.
So funny thing about picking Airbnbs. So Ben Larson in our office, he went to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
He's there right now, and I helped him pick his Airbnb.
Oh, jeez.
And his Marco Polo to me after the first day, he's like, dude, that Airbnb sucked. And he's in a totally different place. So
He just up and left.
he up and left the Airbnb.
Paid for it and everything?
Yeah.
Oh man.
But
have
so
been
I
bad.
guess, yeah, he's like, I had to throw my toilet paper in the garbage, not the toilet. I'm like, dude, that's that whole island. And he's like, there were other things wrong with it too, but
That's the whole reason. Spend an extra $1,000 to throw his toilet paper.
oh,
in the toilet.
it was
That's
funny. So then he went. His new place looks actually pretty sweet. It's on the coast and beachfront and everything. But
yeah, pro tip: never let Peyton pick your Airbnb.
yeah, I get some good ones in there every once in a while. But so this is actually real estate related. I wanted to have Ethan come on because he has been a perfect example of how to build real estate wealth while like working a job. You've just done it so well. And a lot of people are like, I think look up to you in the fact that you've been able to accumulate and do what you have while working a W-2 job. So
Yeah, and making like normal money.
Right.
Not having tons and tons and tons of money to put put down on homes.
Yeah. So let's dive into it from the very beginning, because I think Ethan and Allie were my second client I ever helped buy a house.
Yeah.
And
I
they-
say first.
Why?
I say first because I want that.
Okay.
we were very, very early on. Peyton, at the time, you would drive down with your wife in your old Dodge pickup that you used to have from Logan.
Yeah.
When you still lived in Logan.
Yeah, and you were going to use somebody else, and I was like, no, I'll help you. I'm
Yeah,
better.
we were still we hadn't like become friends after the mission yet. We just knew you from the time that we had spent in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, because we went through like a year or two
it was a
after the
while.
mission.
You lived up in Logan.
So the funny thing is, why I was so ornery during that time, because Ethan, we went and looked at like probably 50 homes. Like they were
probably
so
that.
picky, which is okay, but I didn't have a laptop, and I was framing, had a landscaping company, had our rental up there, and I was working from our desktop at home. So like it was just crazy. I'm glad I finally upgraded to a laptop shortly after that, but I was like, even to print something, I'm like, I got to figure out. I got to figure out how to print this. But we looked at a bunch of houses. So in the beginning, you guys wanted just like a normal house. You were just going to buy something, and you weren't interested in rentals really. You kind of were, but Allie was like, no. And there was this one house that you guys, I remember, is East Bench in Ogden, beautiful, super cheap. Looking back, it was super cheap. At the time, it felt expensive, but you guys almost went for that.
We had offers out on multiple homes that were not rentals.
Yeah.
There were a couple, like probably 4 or 5, and we didn't get any of them. It was funny that homes were priced at like $150,000. Our budget was $150,000, which I look now. I'm like, oh my gosh! I should have bought every single home we looked at. I should have been begging anyone that I knew. Hindsight is 20/20,
But I kept telling them, I'm like, once you get like some of the mailbox money, because I love helping people get into a setup where they can rent out part of their house, and it's super easy when you don't have kids. Like you're newly wedded, newly married, you can just live in part of the house, rent out the other part, or if you're not married, it's even easier. But you guys,
do that, and then you can have roommates.
yeah. And now, fast forward, you have your 4th house under contract, 2 kids, and this 4th house, they're still able to do that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But so let's go back to the first one. So none of those worked out. What switched for you guys?
Why we wanted to do a rental?
Yeah.
We had been exposed to rentals. We right when we got married, my wife's grandma she owned a couple of properties in the Ogden area, and we got married. We were the first of the siblings to get married, and so her grandma offered to let us live in the upstairs of one of her properties if we would manage it. And so we had been exposed to the rental life and what it was like to have people in the basement from the whole time that for about a year we lived in that house, which was awesome. That was a huge leg up for us, and we're forever grateful to Allie's grandparents for letting us do that, because it allows us to save money for our first house when we did have a down payment. So we knew what it was like to have people in the basement and to kind of manage a property and kind of what went into it. We did all the showings, we did all the contracting. We would collect rent, and then we would just deliver it to my mother-in-law, and then we would get free rent for it, which was like a screaming deal for us. So we knew what it was like, and Allie, my wife, did not want it. She said, I want to have our own house, which, of course, anyone wants that, especially a newly married 20-year-old. So we were looking at homes, and we specifically gave Peyton the direction we don't want rentals. But then we couldn't find anything that we liked.
You found stuff.
We found stuff that we liked, but none of it ever went through. And so we actually, the one that we ended up buying, we looked back. It had been on the market for like 60 days. We had seen it come through a couple of times. And one night we were sitting at my in-laws, and I was just scrolling through houses, and I said, we should go look at this one. And it was a total dump. The pictures looked terrible. It had mold in the basement. It had what we call the smoking shack on the back of the house. It was just like this place that people guaranteed were doing drugs, and it had like a nasty couch in it, and then it was like a lean-to off the side of the house made of garbage, nasty old wood. So anyway, and that was the one we ended up buying. I don't know what flipped. You and I were just relentless, because I think I wanted the rental money, because you and I had, I think at this point we were lifting together and we were talking about it.
No, we weren't lifting together then, because I
don't know why. I honestly can't tell you what flipped, except for that it started to finally make sense to Allison.
Yeah. But then this house had an active like water leak. Like we went in there and there was a pinhole just above the main water line, like spraying water out, misting, creating this perfect environment for mold. So like you walk into the basement and it's just muggy and stinky.
Carly wouldn't go in. You remember? She was pregnant.
Yeah, she was
And
pregnant.
she was like, I'm not going in that house. It smelled like cat pee. The carpet was disgusting. The walls were beat up. The doors all had holes in them. It was truly awful.
So
to Allison's credit, I cannot believe, like back in the day, that she was convinced.
Yeah.
I mean, to my credit too. I'll give myself a pat on the back for that. It was gross.
But that now, like you paid what? It was under 150, 140.
Yeah, it was. We contracted it at 160, and then this poor woman that was selling it. Sometimes I still feel. Actually, I don't feel that bad. But
I still feel bad.
We told Peyton, like, we were like, okay, the appraisal came back, the inspection came back. The electricity is bad. It's got this old panel. So we asked for like $8,000 off to get the panel redone. The mold, we asked for $8,000 off. When there were like multiple iterations of us like just slicing and dicing the price. And the last time that we asked for a deduction in price, the realtor for the seller came back and said, listen, we will concede this, but please stop. Tell your clients to chill because my client already feels like they're selling it for too little. She's just a little old lady. Give her a break. And by that point, I was like, perfect. That's where we want them. Got them where we want them. And so we got over 143.5 was the final purchase price.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And it's a sweet setup. So it's got what we looked for. It's not a legal duplex, but it's on a corner lot, and the front, you can access it from the front driveway. You can access like the top level, and then on the side, there's a driveway going around the back that goes to that shed or garage in the back, and then there's a bunch of parking back there, and then a door into the basement.
Yeah.
And did that have 2 laundry areas? I can't remember.
2 laundries, 2 kitchens. Yeah, I had everything.
So yeah, and that's what you got to look for when you're looking for like a mother-in-law setup is you want 2 of everything. A lot of times they'll just have like 1 laundry or something. You'll have to remodel stuff and change things up. But so then you guys moved into the upstairs.
Yep.
You remodeled. I remember you did all the flooring.
Yeah, we redid the flooring in the upstairs. We did a fair amount of remodel. We remediated the mold. We took down the smoking shack. I'm trying to remember what else we did. I mean, over the years, we've pretty much done everything at this point. The kitchens we just redid the kitchens in that property this last summer. The basement flooring we've redone. Both bathrooms we painted. We kind of have done everything at this point.
Yeah, he really has. When they lived in it, because you lived in that for a few years, every summer you'd have like these massive projects
yeah.
that you do. What did you end up? Because the perk of doing it this way, how you did it, is you bought it owner occupied.
Yep.
So
we put like 5% down. It was conventional, but at the time it was like $14,000, and down payments today are much larger than that.
Right.
Just because home prices are so much. But like I said, we had that benefit from not having to pay rent for the previous year, so we were able to save up some money, and our down payment was $14,000, and then we rented out the basement for like $1,000 a month.
And what was your payment?
$900.
So you were cash flowing. You were cash flowing from the beginning.
Yeah, we were cash flowing right from the beginning.
That's bizarre. So,
I guess not if you count all the utilities, because we included utilities in our rental price at the time. So,
well,
but I mean,
you're going to pay that no matter what.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I want to use that as an example because since then we'll move forward. But had you just done that one deal, and I mean, you guys could still be living in that if you wanted to. Was it 3-bedroom upstairs or
It was 3-bed, 1-bath upstairs.
So I mean, you could still be there even with 2 kids, like comfortably, if you had to. You've since have changed, but you bought that what year?
2017, 2016, the beginning.
So we'll just say it's been 5 years. So just off of that one purchase, like this is a snowball effect that I think people don't understand. Like even if you just do this on one property.
Yeah.
So you're essentially, I mean, you waived your mortgage payment in a way.
Yeah, we lived there for free.
You live there for free, and now not only that, there's so many things to talk about right here. This is what I want to talk about right now. Let's just say you've been saving $1,000 a month for the past 5 years. Ethan already can do the 12,000 times 5.
60 grand.
60 grand. So in 5 years, you've saved 60 grand. But not only that, on that house, he no longer lives there. So let's talk about what you're doing with that property now. You got the basement.
Wait. Let's finish. Let's consider if I still lived there.
Okay.
Let's just do that number real quick. Let's say the only property I ever purchased. So I would have saved $60,000 on my mortgage payments, just straight cash into my pocket instead of out.
But now you're renting that basement for almost $1,500 now.
Yes, that basement I get $1,700 now. Right now, I'm trying to re-rent it, and it seems like it's a little high. I have low interest, but yeah, I get $1,700, including utilities, for that basement now, and I also only owe something like $100,000 on that property, and it's borrowed at like 3% interest. So it is better than anything that you could get loan wise. I also have paid down $40,000 of principal on that loan, and the property is probably worth today $400,000, maybe $450,000. So I have made $100,000 just in principal buy down and cash in my pocket. That's on the low end, right? Because that's considering I only made $1,000 per month.
Yeah.
So it's probably $80,000 plus $40,000 in principal buy down plus $350,000 in equity that I've created in that property.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
And at the time, it felt like we were overextending our budget, and we were super poor at the time, and so.
But that's why you do that. Like
we took a risk for sure.
Yeah, but like just that alone, like if you can eliminate your mortgage payment, like that does wonders for people.
Yeah.
Like think about like your biggest expense right now is taxes. Second largest would be like a mortgage payment.
Yeah.
So if you can eliminate that to where you never have to pay that, it just frees up so much more money.
Yeah.
And right now rents are so much higher. Like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit, like you can probably get like closer to $1,500 a month right now. So even though prices are a lot higher, rents have adjusted to correct that as well. I would say it's like any of your properties, if you felt like, oh man, this is a home run, like right after you buy it, or do you feel like you're getting screwed a little bit?
Sometimes, I feel like that when I look at the numbers like we just did.
Well, yeah.
Even still, like that Ogden property, we just spent $20,000 on our over the summer on our kitchen remodels, and so like that's the opposing view to this real estate, because I just made it sound real rosy, right? Like you make $60,000 and then $40,000 and then $350,000, but over the years, I have like spent every extra dime on these properties that I own, right? And so, it's not all easy. And
right.
people say like, well, tenants will trash your properties, and like I've never had that happen. I think that's probably the less common thing that happens. But there are, and that we haven't even talked about what really happened, which is that we leveraged that position that we were in to then buy more properties, which all did the exact same things I just described, and they've all cost me money, but long term, they save me taxes. They allow me to decrease my W-2 taxable income, and they will, over the years, the longer I own them, they're just going to keep continuing cash flow.
So after that, you lived in that property for 2 years?
2.5 years, something like that.
And then you got, another thing I really admire about Ethan is he's always like, he got 2 master's degrees in college. Like he's just a go-getter, and he doesn't sit tight. And so like he's always looking for better opportunities. So he switched jobs, and his next job, this was pre-COVID and everything.
Yeah.
Next job was down in Draper. And so you're like, well, we're moving to Draper.
Yeah, I didn't want to commute. I had just done my master's program, my grad school at the University of Utah, and commuted for that.
Yeah.
I drove our garbage little Saturn SL1 back and forth to the U 3 or 4 times a week, all for 2 years. And so we didn't want to commute again, so we moved down. We looked for a property down closer to Draper.
So you're like, let's house hunt down there. So it's cool. They lived, because all the lenders require is that you live in the house for 1 year.
Yep.
And you put minimal down, and then you're like out and on to the next. So that when you lived in there a little bit longer than you needed to, but when the time was right, you're like, let's buy another house.
Well, and we were poor still, right? I was doing my master's program, so I didn't have a job for those 2 years, and so my wife was killing cockroaches and supporting the family.
Yeah,
she was.
Well, you had a landscaping business.
I had a landscaping business, and I sold pest control in the summers, and like I was still making some money, but not
right,
not like what I was before. I was And we felt it, right? Like we weren't saving money. We were just kind of coasting. Luckily, we weren't losing money because I was able to get a 4-ride scholarship to grad school.
Right.
So we didn't. My wife was working as a nurse, and so we just kind of coasted for those 2 years, and then
when you graduated.
we moved when we did it when we graduated.
So the next house, they're like, Peyton, we want to be down in Salt Lake County. So we get looking, and they're like, we want to do what we did last time. We want like a rental. And you didn't have any kids at that time. You didn't have Adeline.
We did not have Adeline when we bought that house.
So they
But
were
I will
still.
say it only takes one month of collecting rent to then be fully bought in.
Right.
I think for most people.
Oh, for sure.
You collect rent one time and you're like, what? I remember the feeling when, I mean, I get it's a different feeling when you're just collecting it and then giving it to grandma. But that's another funny thing. Grandma didn't ever pay taxes on her rental income, so we would just walk up there with like $3,000 cash.
You just be like, here you go.
She would give a 10% discount if you paid in cash to keep it off the books. And so these kids would all pay, these college kids would all pay in cash. And even that wasn't the same as like when the cash, just like
When it comes
when
into
you
you.
come in and then
Yeah.
just straight into your Venmo account and you just transfer that in. You're like, I didn't do a thing for that money.
It is the craziest thing. And like all of my clients, I'm like, just wait, you're going to get addicted. And everyone that has bought one instantly wants to buy more.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've never met one that's just like, oh, we're good with just one. Like it gets addicting. And it's one of the funnest parts of my job. So they're looking down in Salt Lake County. It's funny because we had looked at quite a few options, and I sent one to Ethan. He hated it. I was like, this is a good one. Like, you guys should check this one out because it wasn't cosmetically appealing. Like, it looked kind of ugly. It has, what's the roof style? Do you remember what they call that?
Oh, a Mansford roof.
Yeah. Mansford roof.
Which, if you don't know what that is, it's where the roof comes down like halfway in front of the house, and then it like angles just very slightly to the peak, and then it does the same thing in the back.
Yeah, they're not the most attractive houses.
They can be pretty if it's a big, beautiful home in the south. That's
Right.
like when you look at them and it's done well, it's done on very nice homes. This was done like in the 70s by a split level quick builder, right? He was just throwing up just subdivisions and probably making grundles of money in the 70s. So that's what this house was.
So this one, I sent it to him. Ethan's like in denial. Like, why are we even seeing this one? They end up loving it. Right?
My wife loved it. I hated it.
Yeah. Well, Allie won. Me and Allie
she
won.
always wins.
Yeah. Ended up writing an offer, going under contract. There's a lot of details like negotiate. Like we could go into that whole story, but we don't have time today. But ended up having meth. We got a lot off the price.
Yep.
After you did some remodel, you found a pistol in there, called the cops. Like some pretty funny background stories. And then lately, you just turned it into an Airbnb, which is going to be cool to see. But so you guys bought that one, did the same thing, put 3 to 5% down, conventional loan. Mm-hmm. Were you showing the income on your last property as taxable income? Like, were you? So that helped you qualify.
Yep.
Because you are now considered like a landlord on your taxes, and they could see that you had taxable income. And so basically the debt from your last property didn't even matter. Like if anything, it helped because you're like, hey, now this property is bringing in $2,000 a month versus, $1,000, and it almost starts to help you. But that first one is hard to get under your belt because you don't have that proof of like, hey, I'm a landlord. I have this rental income. But once you have a few under your belt and you're like, hey, I actually do this for like a second job. It's another business of mine. Lenders look at that and they're like, okay. And like, you can start claiming like future rents on properties. You can't do that. Like this new house that you're trying to buy, you're not going to be like, hey, we're going to rent out the basement and it's going to, cause that one's not a legal duplex, but it is cool as you get these properties, how they can start propelling you forward to being able to qualify for more and more properties because you're counting that rental income on your taxes. A lot of people will just be like, put it under
they just sweep it under the rug and then don't pay taxes on it. But the benefit is that in the future, it will count your debt to income ratio. So said they allow you, lenders will look at like 70% of your rental income and count that towards your debt to income ratio. So even if your income doesn't allow you to qualify for like this house that we're looking at that we have under contract now is like $700,000, which I would probably never qualify for that if it weren't for the 70% of my other rental incomes on all these other properties, because I have multiple mortgages on the properties that I own.
Yeah.
And so those affect me negatively, but then the rents affect me positively.
Right. It's so cool. So you buy the Sandy house, you rented out the upstairs unit of the Ogden house.
Yep.
What did you rent that for? Because your payment was like $900. The basement was like covering all that at that time. So now you rent out the upstairs. Do you remember what you rented that for?
Yeah, the upstairs at that time, I think we got $950. We found this really nice young couple that we liked, and so we rented it to them for $950. So we were making like $1,900 on it.
But after payments, about $1,000.
$1,000.
$1,000.
They're cash flowing $1,000.
So this is where it gets cool, because then they're like, okay, we're positive cash flow, $1,000 here. We're going to buy this Sandy house, and we're going to rent out the basement for. Remember what you rented that out for?
Yeah, $1,200.
$1,200, and then your mortgage payment was
$1,700.
Okay, so rents out the basement for $1,200 plus the $1,000 from Ogden. So now he's positive
$500.
Yeah, which is crazy. So it just starts propelling you forward.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and the problem is though. Well, I don't know if this is the problem. It does propel you forward. We have found that it allows us to buy homes that are bigger and allows us to purchase things that we would not normally be able to afford.
Yeah.
Essentially for us, because even this next house, what we'll do is we'll break even, because house prices have gone up so much over the years. If they had not gone up, I would just be probably raking cash in.
Yeah,
like
but
I would be in such a good position.
Yeah, but well, right.
Yes.
But who breaks even?
Yes.
Like you don't have a house.
I haven't had a house. I've never had a mortgage. Never
Yeah.
paid a mortgage. Well, that's not true. I have never had a mortgage that wasn't offset by additional income from rentals.
Yeah, which is amazing. Like if
Yeah.
we were to add all that up, like the numbers are just insane.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. So lives in Sandy for a year,
It was like a year and a half. Yeah. 18 months or so.
and then you get another job.
Yep.
Well, why did you guys move further north?
Well, everything went remote because of COVID.
yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
I work in tech. And so my job went fully remote. And so I didn't need to be in the office anymore. And so 3 times a week, we spend a lot of time with our families. We are blessed enough to love our families and enjoy spending time with them. And both my family and Allison's family is in Ogden. And so
You're like, let's get closer.
we go up like 3. We would go up like 3 times a week.
Well,
and so
and weren't you pregnant or close to about
we
that
had a
time?
kid. We had a kid in Sandy. We're not
Okay.
pregnant yet with our second, but we had a kid, and so we were driving up an hour there, an hour and an hour back with a 6-month-old in the car. Which, if anyone has kids, they know what that's like. So we decided to move back closer. So we started looking for properties in Ogden and Layton area.
And that was like shortly after they bought that, less than 2 years.
Year and a half.
And find a property in Layton, same thing. Has a
This was when the market was so hot. too.
Yeah. This what year was it? 2021?
Yeah. No, 2020.
2020. Things were
No,
just
no, that's wrong. May of 2021.
yeah, because
Yeah.
things were hot, super hot.
They were very hot. They
And
continued hot for another 7 months or 8, almost a year.
yeah.
But they were pretty hot then.
Well, even when you bought your house in Sandy like that, like you were in the 400,000 range when you bought that.
Yeah.
So like even going from like you're like, man, we paid 150 for our
Yeah.
Ogden house. Now we're gonna pay, over double that.
Yeah.
Almost double and a half that.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. So Layton house, you find that it's got 2 kitchens.
Yep.
And each house like gets nicer and nicer as you go. Like
And
this
more
house,
room for us. Yeah.
yeah. Like this house where they're at now, they have 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, like a playroom, and then the basement has like a really nice apartment, 2 bedroom, 1 bath apartment.
Yep.
And so you rent out the upstairs of Sandy.
Yep.
What did you rent that for?
Upstairs we get $1,700.
$1,700. Jeez.
Though it's an Airbnb, so we don't know.
Right.
It's just barely. We actually had our first booking show up today.
Oh my gosh.
First booking.
How much a night?
That I don't know. It kind of depends. The guy that I'm having do it does a kind of dynamic pricing. This one is
Yeah.
$138 a night. That's
Dang.
what he told me. So,
That'll be cool to watch that play out. We
Yeah,
might have to
see
have
how it
you
goes.
back on and to go over all that. But before you had nightly rentals, what was your last renter? there?
$1,700.
$1,700.
so $2,900 total.
Jeez.
$1,600. So it's cash flowing like $1,300. $1,700. So $1,200.
And then you buy the Layton house and rent the basement out for
$1,450. including utilities.
And what was your payment on that one? Do you remember?
$2,250.
Dude, this is impressive because like my head just scrambled right now with numbers. Ethan's got it all
two
down.
master's degrees, baby. Yeah.
So you rent the basement out, and the offset from all the rents applied towards your new Layton house, like you're still cash flowing.
Yeah, it's about $1,000 a month.
Yeah, that's crazy.
'Cause we were at the time we were making probably at least $1,000 on Ogden, $1,200 in Sandy. So now we're $2,200, and then I get $1,450 for the basement, right? So even after utilities, I think we were cash flowing $1,000.
Jeez. So not only are they not paying a mortgage, they don't have any living expenses through a house really, because tenants are paying for everything.
Yeah.
But on top of that, they're cash flowing, which is sweet. And you have to work like.
It's probably good to be realistic here. So the Layton property cost us like $35,000 to get ready. We had to put like 10 grand down to do. We had to put $10,000 into to create a parking spot because Layton has this ordinance where you can't park on the street in the winter, which seemed like it was a big deal at the time. Though everyone on my street parks on the street in the wintertime. It doesn't matter at all.
So you're like,
had I known, I would have saved my 10 grand. But it is nice to have a parking spot that's off the street for tenants. It's a selling point for sure. So it cost us, and then we did a pretty big remodel on the house. Part of the reason that we were able to purchase it was because it was nasty and gross. Again, every house we buy is like the worst house in a pretty nice neighborhood.
None of them have been like massive. The Layton house was a bigger remodel for sure. It didn't necessarily have to be that huge.
None of them have been gutted.
Right. But it's like a lot of it's like cosmetic, carpet paint updates. The Layton house you did a lot more on.
Yeah.
So I guess the Sandy house you did a big
Sandy was a huge exterior
project. But Ethan, you kind of seem to like those. It seems like till you're in the middle of it.
I do enjoy them. Yeah. But anyway, it isn't all sunshine and roses. There is. I have been able to save a lot of money doing the work myself, but for years, right? Every weekend and every summer, I end up spending time doing house repairs. And so we're talking about all this money that we've been able to generate, but it doesn't come without sacrifice for sure. I think it's important. Like whenever people talk about real estate, it's like real easy to get jacked up on the possibility, but there is sacrifice that has to come, especially when you do it the way that I have done it, right? So
yeah.
I think there's a lot of ways. If you have additional capital to deploy, there's a lot of ways to make it easier on yourself. And the sacrifice is like phone calls and risk, monetary risk. Where I was doing it, it was more I needed to sacrifice my time and effort in order to make it work.
Well, let's talk about how you're managing it and everything. Because right now you're still living in the Layton house, but you're planning on moving into this other house that you have under contract. Same setup. You'll rent out the upstairs of the basement. You'll move into this other house, rent out the basement of that house, and like pretty much break even at that point. This other house is a lot more expensive. Rates are a lot higher. Yeah. But all your efforts that you've put into are allowing you to like get into this new place for essentially like free.
Yes.
In a way. The tenants are paying for it. And you have some sweat equity and stuff you're putting in there. But let's say even had you like paid people to do some of these upgrades and expenses, like you had the cash flow to really do it. Like, let's say you didn't want to touch it. You could have easily made it work still based off of cash flow, and like you might have had to dip into some reserves or a HELOC or something like that. Yeah. But your number still would have worked out.
Yes.
You've just saved more because you did some of the work.
For sure. That's true.
And you enjoy it. But
I think I do.
I don't think it would have been impossible for somebody to say, hey, I want to do what Ethan did, but I don't want to do the work, to not have the opportunity. It's totally
possible. Yeah, it's totally possible.
So Ethan will, like a fridge will go out and he'll be like, hey, I found this sweet fridge. It's like a few years old. It's on KSL, but I got to run to Salt Lake to grab it. And I'm like, dude, you just buy one online or not online, but at the store and have them deliver it. And
Hayden and I have this debate every time something happens. I'll send him a video message, Marco Polo, and I'll be like, I'm just like cussing myself out because I do this. And I go, I found this fridge for $100 and I got to drive all the way out there. One time I bought a dishwasher and I paid him and then got it into my truck and found out it was way grosser than I realized. And then like just rather than go back and knock on the door and be like, hey, I actually don't want your crappy dishwasher, I just kept it and then threw it away at the dump later that day. So like we have this debate where what's actually saves you more money, saving the money on the appliance and going used, or saving the money on the time and going brand new.
Well, so this just happened when was it? 2 days ago. I have this snowblower. I've had it for like 3 years, maybe 4. I bought it for $300 on KSL, but runs like a champ. Earlier this year, like the carb just like gummed up. So I had to replace that. That took me a few hours. The carb wasn't that expensive, but like it took me like 4 or 5 hours to like switch that out, put it back on, get it running, got it running. And then like a few other things started going wrong. Like the pull string pulled out of it. Like the drive would start slipping when I'd want it to go. It would slip and squeak. So I'm like, it's the bell. Like I didn't know exactly what was wrong with it. But so I had the question. I'm like, okay, I paid $300 for this. Do I take it somewhere and have them fix it? I thought I could have it done for like, I don't know, under $200.
Yeah.
I go to pick it up. So I go forward with that plan. While I'm there, I'm looking at brand new like Husqvarna snowblowers.
Yeah, they're like $3,000.
No, yeah, there's some of those, but there's actually some really nice ones for under $1,000.
Oh, okay.
Like $650, $700, $800.
Okay.
So I go and pick it up, and the bill was like $350 or $375, and I'm like, this is more than I paid for the stupid thing to begin with. So it just solidified my thoughts on like just buy it new. But I don't know. Sometimes you hit home runs and you're like, this is why you buy used on KSL, because you can find good deals.
Well, we did that. We bought a Wolf at like a $6,000 range. We got it for $900.
Yeah.
Works perfectly.
And it looks great in your house.
Does work great in our house. It doesn't, my house doesn't have a big enough gas line for it. So if you're preheating it and trying to cook on the stove, it doesn't have enough gas.
Oh, really?
That's not perfect. But it's $900.
But that's not the range's fault. That's your house's fault.
Yeah,
kind
exactly.
of. No, that's funny. But okay, so let's talk about managing this. How are you managing all these? Do you have a manager? Like, how are you collecting rents? Like, what does that all look like?
So I collect rent digitally. I only accept rent via Venmo or Cash App or Zelle or any other equivalent digital tool. Mostly it's only Zelle and Venmo that I get right now. Which actually works really well. Tenants like it too. I don't have to worry about receipts. It's a digital copy for the both of us. I still self-manage all of my properties except for the one that I just flipped into a short-term rental.
But that's only one unit.
It's one unit, yeah.
So
I still will manage the basement.
You're managing 4 other ones right now?
Mm-hmm. And I do that. A lot of people would tell you, like I've tried to engineer my life in a way that I have extra time for myself and for my family. I am not one of those hustle culture kind of guys where like every minute I have to be working to be maximizing my time. And so I do that because 1, I don't mind it. And 2, I still want that extra couple $100 that would come from it. And it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Right. I've done all the remodels myself. And so I know that the work is quality and I don't have issues all that often. Of course you have the occasional appliance that goes out.
Yeah.
But that's probably, it probably averages once a month at the most.
Yeah.
Like it's probably once every other month. I have to go do something for one of my
ours
properties.
are like once or twice. And we have like 20 something units that we're managing right now. Like it's not
really
that
not
bad.
that often.
No. But and Ethan's really good at, he'll tell me what he gets for like rent he'll get for his places. I'm like, you're getting that much? Like sometimes owners will like undercut themselves because they're like dealing with tenants and like they'll short themselves on what they could potentially getting on rent. But I think you overdo it. Like you get more than maybe, like you get at or just slightly above market because you're good at finding renters and getting people in there quickly and efficiently and keeping your properties nice. So like you're double, like I think you're getting more than what a property manager could get you right now, and you're saving on management fees, which is pretty cool.
And this is something that I wrestle with myself all the time. The last thing I've ever wanted to do is be an unethical landlord that charges too much for rent. But I think probably throughout our conversation, you can tell that I spend a lot of time and a lot of money on my properties in an effort to make them as nice as they can be. So I will routinely check the rental market and try to make my property one of the best options on the market at the time.
So you can demand higher rents. Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. And I want to create, good living spaces for tenants that they can live in long term and that don't feel like nasty, gross rentals.
Right.
And so and when a tenant calls me with something broken, I fix it same day, right? Like I generally try and have that done immediately. So like I try not to be a slumlord because I think a slumlord charges the top dollar for the worst property.
Right.
And I'm not doing that. So
No, you've crushed it in that aspect. In all of this, really. Like, it's impressive what you've been able to do. Like, not having real estate as your main background, but like you're so involved in it that you've been able to build this mini empire just within the short few past couple of years.
Yeah, I think I don't know how many properties you have to be a mogul, but I call myself that.
A mogul.
Real estate mogul. I like to think of myself that way. I'm kidding.
So, why are you doing all this? What's your reason behind it? Like, why?
That's a good question. I think one, I enjoy it. I have always enjoyed being handy, and two, it's I have not found something that is well. For me, it is the intersection between something that builds wealth in a very proven way and something that I like.
Yeah.
Right? So there's lots of ways to build wealth, right? Starting businesses, real estate, stock market. Those are kind of the three main ways that people seem to build wealth. And for me, the one that works the best for me and that really resonates with me and that I enjoy is real estate. And so why, long term, I want to be able to generate cash flow without making the sacrifices that I'm making now. I want to put in the time so that I can then later on reap the rewards of those and quit my job and travel and do things that I want to do. Spend time with my kids, create wealth for my kids long term without having to trade my time for it.
So is your plan to like hang on to these forever? Like what's your long-term play with these?
No, I don't think so. I think there's tax strategies that would not be best taken advantage of by holding on to them forever. Like, you can amortize your properties only so long. And so once they become not as tax advantageous anymore, I'll flip them, sell them, and then buy another one. That
like 1031 exchanges and upgrades into different higher performing properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And probably I will eventually flip them into properties where you can get more expensive properties, but that have more units, kind of consolidate into larger units in a single property, and then go that route. But
yeah, because right now all of your properties they're not like legal duplexes, but you've been able to rent them just like that, just fine.
Yeah, I mean, legal. You do air quotes, right? Because the city doesn't care.
No,
the city. I mean, right now, especially in Utah, housing market is insane. The cities and the state needs housing. So
yeah.
I just can't see them going after a small time landlord and saying, hey, you're a non-conforming, unless you have terrible tenants that are bugging the neighbors.
Yeah.
Which I don't, because I try and get the best tenants for the best properties. And so, I don't. You're right. It's not technically legal as according to city code, but I have almost never heard of that happening.
Right.
Where cities will come and crack
it's like
down
you're
on
solving a need out there because like there's a housing shortage, but it's against what might be enforced. But like it's like up in the valley, like there's only certain areas you're supposed to do nightly rentals in, but everybody's doing them anyway. Like Airbnb has like created this whole dilemma as well, because like technically there's only certain areas where it's zoned for nightly rentals, but everybody still does anyway.
Yeah.
So,
and it provides a ton of value for everyone involved.
Right.
So it's not. Yeah, it would be not in the city's interest to come and crack down on that type of thing.
The only time I've run into issues is with Logan City. They were a little bit sticklers. That was on my own house, but they ended up not worrying about it down the road. So we got around that one. You're very like diversified. Like you have crypto, you have stocks, you have IRAs. Like Ethan's doing a lot of stuff that I'm like, man, I should do more of that. But I like it because he is so diversified. Like it seems like you go the most heavy into real estate.
That's true. Yeah, I like I said, I think there's lots of ways to build wealth. I've owned a business before. Peyton's right. I work in tech, and so I've had some stock grants and that sort of thing. So I have money in the stock market. I have money tied to businesses that I work for, and I have money. I got into crypto and Bitcoin early on. Well, I don't know, or not early on. I'll say early. I got into it early on, and so I have money in that. It's not worth hardly anything anymore. But
it was at one point.
It was a lot of money. I felt crypto rich for a few days, weeks. But yeah, real estate by far is the thing that I am most heavily invested in and spend most of my time doing.
So if you're a beginner and you're like, man, I want to get into this. I want to like play my cards right and like save money and invest wisely. Like how would you recommend somebody getting started and getting into the game if they haven't bought anything yet?
Yeah, I think the best thing is you got to do it. That's the biggest thing, that you have to commit and make it happen. Because even a bad deal over time becomes a good deal.
Right.
And if you get paralyzed by the amount of money that you have to spend, right? Like it will always seem like too much money. But long term, you will always win in real estate, right? Like there's never been like a 10-year period where real estate went down.
Yeah.
Ever.
Right.
So like hold a property for 10 years and you're solid. Like
Right.
You cannot lose. And then the second thing I would say is find a good agent. I think over the years, like Peyton has been my agent, obviously. As we talk about this, he helped me buy my first home and helped me buy each subsequent home. But I think that has been like enormously beneficial for us. And having someone because you're not helping just me, you're helping lots of people do this, right? So like and Peyton, you've done this yourself, right? Like we're talking about my successes. They're probably half as good as your successes, right? Like you have a fourplex that you bought for like $200,000.
$250.
Yeah. What does that cash flow?
Yeah.
Like $4,500, and your mortgage is like $600, right? Like so like we're talking about mine, and I love to talk about my successes, but they're like paltry, like compared to what other people are able to accomplish, right? And so I think that benefit that wisdom and knowledge is hugely beneficial, and there have been like multiple contacts that you've given us over the years. So I guess suffice it to say that your agent matters a lot. There are agents that, like your brother's cousin who just got into real estate, is probably not the right guy to help you buy your first investment property,
Right.
unless he's done that. And your brother's cousin might be a great agent, right? But like find one who specializes and knows what they're talking about, probably invest themselves, helps other investors, because they will have insights into how it works that other people just won't.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate the compliment. Too kind. But a thought that came to me, because I guess another question is like, should you house hack? That's essentially what you've done. You've bought a house for yourself, but you're like monetizing other areas of it, so it generates income for you. Should you house hack or not house hack?
I think it depends on your financial situation, how much capital you have to deploy, because it does matter how much money you have to put down. If you're buying an investment property, those loans come at 20% down minimum, right?
Yeah.
Some of them are 25%.
Right.
So if you're cash poor, but you have a good job that will help you qualify for a loan, then definitely house hack. Don't wait until you save your 20% down, because that'll take you 5 years.
Right.
20% down on a house in Utah right now is like minimum $100,000. No, I don't know, not quite that, but minimum 70, right? And so saving $70,000 will take you a couple of years, even if you're a pretty good wage earner, right? If you make 150 grand, saving 70 grand, I guess that could be done in a single year. But there's no reason to wait because you can house hack.
Right.
But if you have a ton of cash and you have a bigger family and you don't want to share your house with somebody, because that's certainly something. Eventually in my life, I would like to own my own home where I don't have people living in my basement, right? Like that.
But what you're doing, you're like setting yourself up to where you could buy $1 million house and have all your rentals pay for that.
Yes.
Like, because we got to that point. Like, that's where we're at right now. Yeah. Like, we live in Eden, love it, on an acre, have a shop, and like our cash flow from all of our rentals pays that mortgage.
Yeah, probably more than pays it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. And it's funny to me that, like, I think the answer is, like, should you house hack or not, depends on your financial standing. If you're in a spot where you have a lot of extra reserves and cash and you can afford 20 or 25% down and you can make your numbers work and you don't need to like house hack and live in it and do it how you've done it, then that's great. But when you're younger, like, this is mostly for the younger generation. Like, if you're under 30, live in a house, rent out some of the other rooms. Like, I don't care if you're married, not married, have kids, don't have kids. Like, we were living in our fourplex, 1,000 square foot apartment with 2 kids. But we weren't paying any mortgage. Like, we'd go on trips. Like, we've always had that luxury of being able to travel and do things because we're not house poor. And it's crazy, the snowball effect of this.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I don't think people put as much weight on it as they should. Like, I'll be negotiating deals and they're planning on living in the house, and you know, it comes down to $10,000 and they're like, nope, that's a deal breaker. Sorry, we're gonna have to walk. And I'm telling people that they have the option to buy a house, rent out the basement, and they can get an additional $1,500 a month towards their mortgage payment. Like, that's like buying a property for, geez, I don't know how much 1,500 equates to, like, in mortgage payments right now, but hundreds of thousands of dollars less.
Yeah.
And like, so you can structure deals to where you can now maybe like go leverage a little bit more, but because you're going to rent something out, like, it offsets the payments that much that you can get into nicer properties or whatever. But you can set yourself up for success by house hacking and running deals this way. And I love seeing it because I've helped multiple clients. Really, they've helped themselves because they're like, hey, we want to buy a property this year, and then we're going to live in it for a year or two, and then we're going to do another one and another one and another one.
Yeah.
And it just snowballs. And it's so cool to watch. And you're not having to dump hundreds of thousands of dollars to get these properties. You're just leveraging time and the bank's rules of, hey, you just need to live in there for a year. That's it.
Yeah, it's like it's an inevitable wealth building strategy. I cannot avoid that these houses are going to make me a bunch of money.
But
over
you
the
have
next 20 years.
But you have to sacrifice sharing floor plans. Like,
yeah, but it's a very mild sacrifice, though. I never hear my tenants.
Yeah.
I never see my tenants. They're just nice neighbors to me.
Right.
Like they're neighbors that share my driveway.
Yeah.
And it's pretty low key and easy. I will say the other thing, when you're considering house hack versus buying it just as an investment property, if you're a new landlord, sometimes it can be very helpful to be that close to the property, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're a new landlord, you're going to know if your tenants are playing music super loud or are smoking weed or are doing something that they should not be doing in the house. And so there's an advantage to being there close to it.
Oh, it's so nice. And everybody's like, well, I don't want the calls at 1 a.m. in the morning saying the toilet's clogged. How many calls have you had like that?
I had one from a guy. He got himself locked out. He called me at 10:30. I was in Sandy. This was my Ogden property. He called me at 10:30 at night, and he was like, hey, I'm locked out. And I was like, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm an hour away. And
did he call a locksmith or something?
I said no. He was the upstairs tenants were there, and so there was the splitting door.
Yeah.
And it was just an interior door, and so I said, just break the door down. And he said, okay, so just to be clear, you are telling me to break down the door. And I was like, yeah. What else do you want me to do? Do you want to sleep in the cold tonight? I'm not driving up there. I don't have a key for it. So he did that, and I learned a very valuable lesson that now all of my properties have lock boxes on the premise that have keys for all the doors.
Yeah, mine do too.
That won't ever happen again.
But that's the worst one.
Oh yeah, by far the
Like,
worst.
I don't think we've ever had one where it was a late night call. Hey, we got to get this done. Like, it just doesn't happen. We've never even had to do an eviction.
I've never had to do an
wood.
eviction either. That's pretty easy to avoid, I think. Just don't. I mean, you can background check people.
Right.
Don't rent to people who have evictions.
Right.
That's it. Problem solved.
Yeah, make sure their credit's good and everything like
Yeah.
that. It's really not that hard. People get into it. They're like, they hear all the horror stories and like, I don't want to manage it. And there's some days we'll Marco Polo each other or call each other and be like, man, rentals suck. But it's self-inflicted. Like, we're still self-managing. But like most of the time, months go by and you're collecting thousands of dollars a month in rent, and it's just paying all your mortgages, your cash flowing. Like,
It's fantastic.
it's definitely better than worse, for sure.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Better than worse.
No, this has been awesome. Do you have any other words of advice or things you want to throw out there for people that might be considering this?
No, I don't. Just do it. I think I don't know. We've kind of talked ad nauseum on this, but I think that it is the best. I will say this sometimes, and people will like. I don't know. I've said this once to a lady I work with because she told me she had a rental, and I was like, "Oh, isn't it just the best wealth building strategy ever?" She looked at me like, "Nah, okay, you weirdo." But I just have absolutely loved it. All my brothers and sisters have done it. They all own multiple homes. My sister-in-law just did it. I think it's a huge thing. It might be the only way to buy a property as a 22-year-old newlywed.
Right now, for sure.
They just bought a property in Bountiful. Michaela helped them. This is they just closed on that, and I think it's probably the only way that they would have been able to afford a home anymore. Right. In Utah.
So they're going to rent out the basement for $1,000, $1,500.
Probably gonna. They listed it for $1,500, and they had like tons of interest.
Oh my
so they'll
gosh.
probably get at least that.
Yeah. So like the benefits are so incredibly worth it versus just being like, I'll just pay all my mortgage myself.
Yeah, that would. I think about people that do that, and it's such a bummer.
Right.
Like how expensive, man.
Well, and now so you guys, you're 31, 32.
No,
How old
31.
are you? 31. He's 31, folks. 31, 2 kids.
Yep.
And this next house you want to buy, you want to do it again? Are you crazy?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. This next house we want to buy, like, I think too, I've done the math on this next house that we want to buy. I would need to make like $500,000 a year. And in my career path, like that'll eventually be possible if I'm a VP or I have some kind of stock equity that becomes worth a lot of money. But I'm nowhere near that right now. So that there's no, like the neighbors that I will have in that neighborhood are going to be people who have made serious wealth over the years, or who have sold their house that they owned for 10 years and had $500,000 in equity that they were able to put down, and so they can afford the mortgage. But like, this is a home that I would never have been able. I wouldn't have been able to afford this home for another probably 10 years at least.
So let's talk about it, because it's kind of cool how you're doing it. Because most people, like even me and Carr, were like, yeah, we're gonna, like, we didn't find another house that had a rental ability, but like. There was one actually that I sold, and I look back and I still regret I didn't buy it.
It was before your Eden house?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I don't know. You guys love your Eden house though.
I love my
such
Eden
a cool
house.
property up there.
This other house though, it was this massive, I think it was like, it had 10 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms.
Oh geez.
3 separate kitchen areas, and I could have added a 4th.
Oh, so it would have been like a 4-plex.
Yeah.
How much was it?
It would have been over $1 million. I think we were like at 1.2, 1.3. But I even called a lender and was like, hey, could I swing this right now? He's like, it's tight, but you might be able to pull it off. And it was on 3 acres, right? Nice. Close to Nordic.
Oh, so it was in Eden.
It was in Eden.
Wow.
I would have Airbnb'd each one of those little cabin
man, you
units.
messed up.
Yeah, I did. But so I didn't do that one. But so you guys are going to do this one. And you have 2 kids, like you're definitely like past the point where people would expect that of you, or even think that you need to do that. But you found this house that has 2 bedrooms on the main, 2 bedrooms upstairs. There's an office on the main, and then the basement has 2 or 3 bedrooms downstairs, full kitchen, like massive area. 3-car garage, 4-car garage, half an acre, like some RV parking, like. It's checking all the boxes and a rental.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show that you can still house hack, like even like bigger and bigger. Like that house in Eden I was telling you about, that sucker was like, I want to say like 8,000 or 9,000 square feet.
It's huge.
I know it had 10 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms.
My goodness.
It was crazy. And I sold it, and I didn't jump on it. But that property, like we've done well in our Eden house, and I think we're meant to be where we're at. Like I have a gym, and my kid, like the bus stops, like there's so many advantages to where we live now with my family and kids. But financially, that house, it would be worth $2 or $3 million right now.
Yeah.
Like in the matter of like 3 years, I screwed up.
Yeah, it's all right. It's not all about money. Life's not all about money, and that's the thing that I think is so great about real estate is it allows you to make a ton of money, but also create scenarios for your family that
you're like, I would never do this had I not like set myself up this way. Yeah, and it's like the best time to plant a tree was yesterday.
Yep.
Like the second best time is right now.
I think you're saying it's 20 years ago. Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Best time is today.
There we go. All right. So what's your real estate goals moving forward? What are you planning on?
Yeah, I think we will. I don't know exactly how we'll swing it. It depends on what the market will do, but continue buying houses. I want to buy a house at, every year or two for the next, 20 years. And then eventually I will generate enough wealth where probably I will end up doing it full time, or at least a larger part of my time. I really enjoy what I do in tech, but I think I get more of a kick out of real estate. And so eventually it would be, I think it would be really fun to do consulting and kind of flip-flop what I do. Spend most of my time real estate investing, and then just consult as a product marketer.
Yeah. So it gives you so much flexibility.
It does. Tons of flexibility.
And just security. Like you're just like, man, if anything happened, like I got rental income.
Yeah, I think this is a good way to look at it. So the other day, when I was considering whether or not to do an Airbnb, right? I had to invest some of my money into the Airbnb. I had to buy a bunch of furniture and everything. And, and considering buying this house, right, that's expensive. And I was talking to my dad, and he was like, a lot would have to go right, or a lot has to go right for this to work out financially. And on the flip side, I think a lot has to go wrong for real estate to not turn out good, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to have a terrible tenant on top of your roof collapsing, on top of the market crashing, on top of you losing your job, on top of your wife leaving you, right? Like it has to be a really negative scenario to where real estate all of a sudden becomes a bad idea to buy it, right? And so it a lot has to go right for it to be home runs, but it almost always works out.
Yeah. You know what I also like to think about? Like whenever you have like a bad day, like something breaks or you just do something stupid that you're like, well, that was $1,000 mistake. I'm always like, well, I'm not paying a mortgage. So like I use that to like offset my bad days. Like, well, at least my rentals are being paid for or whatever. Like, it's just a consistent, like you're buying a business and you're setting it up and it's not that hard to set up, but it just pays you and pays you and pays you. And like people are worried, like, is it going to rent? And it's like, yeah, vacancy's like under 3%, 2% right now.
Never had a hard time renting anything.
Yeah. So anyways, this has been awesome. So tell us, let's end with this. What's your favorite adventure you've ever been on? And what are your future adventures that you're like looking forward to? So Ethan's my adventure buddy. Like anytime I do something crazy or he does something crazy, we always like get each other involved somehow. And we come up with the dumbest ideas. Like we did 100-mile hike.
No, these are my best adventures.
Okay.
I'll tell them. Okay. So my best, I think the two that topped my list as the best adventures were actually, so when on Peyton's 30th birthday, we ran 30 miles. And at the time, we were like both fat. Now I'm the only fat one. Peyton has actually gotten in really good shape lately. But we were like not long distance runners, but we just like up and ran an ultra marathon, which I didn't realize at the time it is an ultra marathon. It technically counts. It's more than a marathon. It counts as an ultra marathon.
So this is where I like inviting Ethan on stuff because I'm like, hey, I'm turning 30. I want to do something epic. And I saw somebody, he turned 40, ran 40 miles. I'm like, I want to do 30 miles. And I had a bad knee. Like I've had a surgery on my knee and my ACL is still not there. So I'm like, I don't know if I should do it. But I'm like, it would be cool to do a trail run that's 30 miles and like never touch the like asphalt basically. And you mapped it out.
Yeah, I mapped it.
So he mapped it from
Wasatch Peak.
No.
So whose story is this? Oh, I thought you asked me about my best adventure. So it was Wasatch Peak.
It's my birthday story.
All right, but you see, so I mapped it out. Spent like probably too long during work one day figuring out what would be the best 30-mile route and how we would achieve it. So the night before, we drove up to what was that little basin called?
It was like Willard Basin or
Willard Basin. It's like where you can drive your car all the way up to the peak of Wasatch Peak, right?
Not Wasatch. Isn't it Inspiration Point right there?
Yeah, but it's Wasatch Peak. It is not technically Wasatch Peak, but it is that mountain.
Okay, yeah.
I'm fairly sure.
Okay.
I've mapped it.
It's right by right above Brigham City.
Yeah, it is. But you can drive a car like almost all the way up to the top of the mountain.
Not a car, truck.
Yeah, truck. It's a dirty.
You would not get up there in a car.
Yeah, a four-wheeler or something. But we drove up there. Peyton's dad drove us up there, and we stayed the coldest, windiest night of my life. Probably not the coldest, but the windiest night of my life on an air mattress under the stars. Peyton and I, and then we woke up at 4:30 in the morning.
Well, no, I don't even know if we woke up because we're sleeping on this stupid air mattress, and we're in this basin, and it seems like the wind is just blowing up the basin.
It was so cold.
And my dad's in the back of the truck, and we're like, we can't fit all of us in the back of the truck. Yeah. So me and Ethan will sleep on the air mattress. Was Timber with us? We had Timber with us. And it's just like, I don't know how many, relentless. Like 50 mile an hour winds.
Sand in your eyes kind of wind.
Just blowing. And we were on this air mattress, and it was blowing so hard that the edge would start to flip up, and it's like picking us up and like slamming us down. And so we're trying to like scoot over on the edge, just like trying to get some sleep at night. Yep. And next thing I know,
till like midnight.
Yeah. Next thing I know, I hear the alarm going off, beep, beep. And I'm like, well,
Kind of a relief, honestly.
I know.
So we got up and ran up to Inspiration Point and then back down and then up over to Ben Lomond.
But hold on, what time did we get up? It was
It was like 4:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning.
yeah.
Because we were running 30 miles and we knew it was going to take us a while. And we didn't want to run in the sun because it was summertime. It was like September.
Yeah.
So we woke up really early, ran over to Ben Lomond Peak. And right as we were hitting Ben Lomond Peak, the sun was rising. It was incredible. And then we ran down, crossed the divide and went up and over Lewis Peak and then came down
Ogden Canyon.
Skyline Trail.
Yeah, Skyline Trail down
And
to
then
Ogden Canyon.
Yeah, we ended at the lake.
But
And
we ended at 30.34 miles or something like that.
yeah, it was like perfectly 30 miles. And I finished first. I finished before Peyton.
I knew he was going to say
I
that.
like to say that. He was just limping and gimping like an old man at the end.
I ate something that like my gut was just like twisted up and like I was struggling that last half. But Ethan was just cruising like a freaking mountain goat all the way down.
It was a fun time. That was one of my best adventures. The other one was for my 30th birthday. I wanted to hike 100 miles. We were going on a 100-mile backpacking trip. So when I turned 30, we went up to the Highline Trail in the Uintas. It starts like in the far east of the Uintas and then goes all the way through. And like I look at it fondly now, but during our time, it was horrible. Like it was the first day, it was 23 miles and there was no water. So we had to carry all of our water for the first 23 miles. And I mapped this route out too. And took us to a lake that, because it was such a drought that year, there was no lake. So we slept in like this muddy riverbed, this muddy lake bed, and it was a pretty brutal camping trip. We actually didn't finish on mile like 60. We got snowed out. It wasn't 60. It was a mile 70. We got snowed out, and then
We ended up doing like 90 miles.
we did like 93 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, total. But we got snowed out at 70 miles, and so we looked for alternate routes out and had to call to get rescued from a different trailhead than we were originally going to leave. And so anyway, I guess long story short, the rivers, we tried to go down this one way, but it was down a ravine. And because of all the moisture, all the snow that had fallen, the river was just absolutely raging. And so all of the places where you had to cross the river, we couldn't cross the river. And so we had to go back up in and out another ravine that would take us out.
We had to camp over that night. Ethan's sick. Like this story was terrible because Ethan's like
the story's quite
throwing
long,
up, diarrhea,
Yeah, I got
and
something.
just like not feeling good, just like looking like he's dead.
I hadn't eaten for like 2 days 2 or 3 days by the time we got out, and I lost like 25 pounds.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then we thought we had people coming up to get us because we're like, we just have to follow this trail down. We'll be out in 9 miles. Like we'll be out this afternoon. So we just throw our stuff in there, hightail it down, and we're just getting soaked. Like we're like, we'll be dry later today. Like just reckless with our behavior, thinking we're going to be out that night. And then we get trapped on this Y on the wrong side of the river. There's no way to get across. So we end up having to it's either we keep trying, but it was almost dark. And like our GPS phone's like not working
because the sun hadn't shined in 3 days.
We had a solar charger and it's dead, and it was a mess.
And
so
the whole time, like life flight helicopters are going in and out, saving other people. It was a pretty rough weekend, I think, in the Uintas.
And we had a SOS button on our thing that we could press, and we had it flipped open. We're like,
what happens if you press it?
Yeah. No, the question was, how much do you think this button costs if we press it? And how much are each of you willing to pay if we press this button? And we're like, we're not going to press it. But we're like, at what point, like, is it dire enough that we need to press the button? Because right now, we want to press the button.
We wanted to bad, but obviously we were days away from needing to press the button, I think.
Well, I think it turns pretty fast. Like, had we not got a fire going that night, like, we could have had to press it that night if it got if it got cold enough and stuff. And then it started raining that night, and like we barely got our stuff dry enough to where we could like sleep the night through. And then the next morning, we threw a note across the river because we had people coming up there, and we couldn't communicate with them because our phones were dead. And we tried this other way, barely squeaked across the river there. Like, had one of us slipped in that river, like it was life and death.
It was death, yeah. You would have died.
And we have our packs on. We had to try and get timber across. We're using sticks. Like it's up over our thighs. Like it was sketchy. We ended up getting out. And we were all just
Man, you remember that? I had a blister the size of like a silver dollar on my heel.
bigger than that.
I was just a soft baby boy out there.
That's your favorite adventure?
It was one of them. That was a real adventure. That one was scary. I don't know if it was scary, but it was a lot of fun. At least that's how I remember it. I remember it fondly. I now have a rule though that I don't backpack more than 10 miles a day. That trip ruined me. 10 miles a day is my limit. I quit having fun after 10 miles.
He's not going to stick to that because we got some other adventures we're going to do. But
that's a pretty good adventure. I think our Vietnam adventure was a lot of fun. And then I went on a trip once that was hardly an adventure, it was a low adventure with Allison. We went to Nassau and checked out like every beach on the island. And had a ton of fun. That was like one of my favorite vacations I've ever been on. So
you had some good ones. If you ever need a good vacation, just get with Ethan. Because he's been just
I have
about
some good
everywhere.
vacation ideas, but and then another one that I think is worth mentioning too was just a fishing excursion we went on in Oregon, and we got on this fishing vessel, and the sea was like pretty, I don't know. To me, they were high. They were like probably 6 to 12 foot waves, but apparently it was just like kind of a normal day for the Pacific, and we were bouncing around in the ocean, and people were puking over the side. Like there was this one kid that I remember just kept puking over and over and over again. My mother-in-law was there, sister-in-law was throwing up. My father-in-law was throwing up. Everyone was just sick, and I was just loving it. I was feeling super sick, but I remember just like feeling like it was so primal, just like the wind on my face and the salt spray. And then we were catching these big old rockfish, and my father-in-law caught this like 3 foot long ling cod. So that was a ton of fun. And we're going sturgeon fishing this spring in May up in Idaho, and I'm real excited.
Oh, that's going to be awesome.
So
we'll see if you can catch a bigger sturgeon than I've got.
I definitely will. That's my goal.
Yeah, I don't know. Mine was over.
7.5 footer?
Yep.
I'm gonna catch a 9 footer.
All right. Good luck. That'll probably be world record.
I can't wait to come back on. Tell everyone that I caught a 9
It's going to be so photoshopped. I need to see the real thing, like a video.
All right.
Full blown video.
There, I'll wear my GoPro.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you learned some stuff. And Ethan, where can they find out more about you?
Oh, I don't have any. I'm not.
Hit me up and I'll get you in contact with Ethan.
There's nothing to learn about me, but if you want to, talk to Peyton. I guess I'm probably on Instagram, but I don't post anything. So there's nothing. I try and stay incognito online.
LinkedIn, you're more active on LinkedIn.
I'm on LinkedIn. That's true. Yeah. That's probably the best to look.
Hit him up on LinkedIn, Ethan Annis.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.